Welcome, friends. My name is Melissa Dunn, and this channel is all about helping you learn to love reading the Bible. Now, if you're like me, you may say, I already love reading the Bible, Melissa. Well, then this is the channel for you as well, because I love reading the Bible, but I want to learn to love it even more, because that is how I experience God. So that's what we do around here. If that sounds interesting to you, or maybe like it's your thing, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button below, and that's just going to notify you when new videos come out every single Friday. At least I hope they will come out every single Friday. Have you ever felt really intimidated when you open the Bible? You don't know where to start, you don't know how to study, or which resources are right or wrong. I've been there, and I think there's a really good chance that you probably have been there as well. What we do around here is just take a small, simple step and just unfold it and hopefully learn a little bit something about the Bible. Today it's going to be about 2 Timothy, but also to learn a bit about the process of how simple and easy it can be. Here is my list of questions, and these I jotted down really quick in my phone after I had listened to the book of 2 Timothy 2 or 3 times while making my breakfast. You can find that video below in the description. And also in that video, this was my musing. I had a friend who says, you ponder a whole lot, or you kind of muse out loud. I'm just thinking. Here's what I was thinking after I'd listened to the book of 2 Timothy a couple times. As I was listening, once again, captured by this relationship between Paul and Timothy, there is a certain intensity. As I'm listening, I'm like, man, what was Paul feeling? What was he concerned for Timothy? What was Timothy like receiving this letter, knowing it would be read to the whole church? It was going to be passed around. How did he feel? How did Timothy feel? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take that musing of why was Paul so intense in the book of 2 Timothy. I'm going to take that and I'm going to write that across the top of my piece of paper. Now, my piece of paper is actually a digital iPad. I don't use paper. I went paperless maybe, I don't know, 8 months ago. But if you're a normal human, you're probably going to open up your journal and write at the top of it, and really big, it's going to be your guiding question. Why was Paul so intense when he's writing this letter to Timothy? Now, I also did this. I wrote a secondary question that actually goes with the first one. I don't typically do this, but I also don't like abiding by rules as well. So I had this other question that went right along with it, and it was this. What was Paul and Timothy's relationship like? Like, what did it consist of? Because I knew there was probably a connection between Paul's urgency and their relationship. So once I have those questions written at the top of my piece of paper or my iPad, I then start to actually search the Bible. And for this example, all that I'm searching, all that I'm looking and reading is in the book of 2 Timothy. Okay, friends, I've got my glasses on, my hair pulled back, which just means I mean business. So it is time to think. And actually what my glasses really means is it's time to see. I cannot see with my contacts in. I can barely see with my glasses in, but they do better than my contacts. The first thing I do is I write down the chapter and verse. And here Paul says, Timothy, my beloved child, or some versions say my beloved son. So it's clear that Paul sees Timothy in like a father-son paternal type relationship. We see in verse 3 that Paul is praying constantly for Timothy. Paul longs to see Timothy. And I just write Tim because I'm lazy. And Paul here is describing at the top of the letter how he's brought to tears, thinking about his son in the faith, Timothy. And he sort of rounds out this section by saying how much joy Timothy brings to Paul. So all of this, I'm seeing this deep affection between Paul and Timothy. Now here I'm going through and writing some notes about Paul's relationship with not just Timothy, but his family too. Do you have those people in your life that are not just your friends, but they're friends of your family? That's a whole other level friend. And you get this idea as we're reading through this first chapter, and Paul is saying, I'm convinced that your mom and your grandmother have a pure faith, and I'm convinced that you have that faith as well, which just means Paul really knew Timothy's grandmother and mother. So through all of this, I've got one note that says, look into this, and I marked it in red. I want to look up and see if I can find out how long Paul knew Timothy. Like, did he know him from when he was a little boy? Is it stated? I don't remember. So I just want to look that up and see if it's anywhere. And then I'm just writing around those notes, just some thoughts that I am thinking. And as I'm writing around it, it's just firming up my own thoughts about what the letter actually says. Now I'm hunting with this idea of not their relationship, but Paul's urgency. Verse 16, we clearly see that he's in prison. In verse 6, he says, I'm going to die soon. This is it for me. So in verse 9, he's like, because of all that, come quickly. Then in verse 16, he says in chapter 4, he recalls how no one stood with him in his first hearing. How lonely that must have been. Nobody has come. A lot of people have deserted him. And he's saying, Tim, come quickly and bring my coat and my scrolls. Just get here. Timothy's in Ephesus. Paul is probably in Rome. That's quite a trek. So you can see why Paul, this urgency that I'm sensing as I'm listening to it over and over, it makes logical sense why that would be there. His son, Timothy, his son in the spirit, he wants to see him before he dies. So now it's just time to wrap it all up and make some conclusions. It was easy to see that Paul and Timothy had a deep connection, at least from Paul's perspective. I mean, I'd like to hear it from Timothy too, but we don't get to hear it from Timothy. We see that Paul played a part in Timothy's ministry, a large part, and especially in the launching of his ministry. They're in the trenches together, which, man, that is where some bonding happens. So I'm just going to highlight all of that in blue, and my question is blue. That's the answer. That's the conclusion that I've come to, at least in 20 minutes from that question, is all in blue. Now, why was Paul so intense in the book of 2 Timothy? My conclusions were, Paul knew his days were numbered. He's also urging Timothy. This is a wondering. I wonder if he's thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to see him face to face. I don't know if he's going to get here as soon as I need him to get here. And I need to impart to him this urgent, be bold. Do not be ashamed of the gospel. Do not be ashamed to suffer. Guard your mouth. Guard the flock. Do not let false teachers in. If Paul is trying to get all of this stuff out with urgency, thinking this could possibly be the last communication I have with my son. You're going to see, I'll show you. So this is what all this mess looks like. This took about 20 to 25 minutes for me to do. Now, this is after I had listened to the book of 2 Timothy. And I had re-listened with my questions in mind, so I kind of knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to look at. So a lot of my work had been done already, just in listening and thinking. So when it came down to write it all down, it did not take me that long. Here are 3 things that I hope will be helpful for you in your Bible study. Number 1, when you're asking a question, make sure that it's your question. Yes, I think you should be asking questions, but we want to be asking our own personal questions. And the reason for that is when we're asking a question that is really ours, that we really care about, that we're really curious about, we will search for it in a completely different way. Number 2, take that question, write it real big, and it's going to be your guide. It's going to be where you're going to focus and concentrate all of your reading or listening. And you're just going to jot down everything and anything that you think might help you answer that question. Then number 3, you're just going to make a couple simple conclusions. Simple like you're talking to your 5-year-old. Not super spiritual language that starts with these and thous and has to be real intelligent. And our conclusions can be more questions. And our conclusions can be stuff we already knew. That's okay. We're digging out and exploring, and that's a part of the process. Really, the more simple, the better. You know, I'm going to say it. When something is simple, we are more likely to engage with it. And the deepest, most impactful things tend to be the simplest. I really hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, would you consider sharing it with a friend and inviting them along on this journey with us? And that is it for this week. If you want to say hi, you can catch me on Instagram, DM me. I'd love to chat. I will see you next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but it will be about the Bible. I'm sure of that. Bye, friends. Tell my friends on YouTube why You don't want to get a haircut.
Because I'm having fun with it.